This is a Basswood County. Warning, there's a criminal on their gun. But witnesses who lived have said that he is not a normal human being. He runs around at an unusual speed. He is not seen normally by anyone.
I've always wondered what it would be like to live in one of the analog horror universes, but I decided it would be way more interesting if rather we looked into 3 of them, and the horrific nightmare that would follow. And I think it would go something like this. Instead of an alarm clock, you wake up to the sound of a TV alert blaring. Again. And to be honest, at this point, there wouldn't even be a need to set one due to all the disappearances going on, and all the warnings going out to whoever's left. It seems this time there are reports of a hooded killer breaking into people's homes, ending their lives, and stealing their bodies for unknown reasons. Police would likely be trying to investigate this in order to figure out what's been causing it, but the volume would be far too big due to simply the amount of entities there would be. There would also likely be many reports of houses found with giant holes just sitting in the floor, completely abandoned and infested with a root-like substance, almost as if something or someone burrowed up through the floor. Now, if that doesn't already sound chaotic enough, I'm going to be going over a day in the life coexisting with the entities from Gemini Home Entertainment, Vita, Carnis, and Basswood County. It's safe to say this universe might even be more deadly than the Trevor Henderson one, as everything from space and nature, the suburbs, and especially urban areas are at risk of being entered and terrorized by these creatures. This is going to be a fun episode, so let's get into your life in analog horror. By the way, if you enjoy my content, the best thing you can do for me is watching until the end. It means a lot and it helps more people see my content. Oh, and as common with these videos, make sure to keep an eye on the little number in the top right, as that's going to be our survival percentage, and it's going to change as the video goes on, going up and down as we figure out both challenges and do's and don'ts to avoid them. Now to start, I want to go over a sort of morning routine that I came up with, but before that I have to explain what exactly we're dealing with for the people who are unfamiliar with one or all of these series. Gemini Home Entertainment to start begins with an unfamiliar planet referred to as the Iris entering our solar system. It is theorized to be a living entity consisting of gigantic root-like compounds that grow everywhere and mutate everything that they touch, including asteroids and even entire planets, and it seems like its next goal is Earth. On the other hand, Basswood County mostly consists of unknown beings that enter humans to take over their entire bodies and wear their skin, using it as a method to trick and lure other humans close enough to be stolen and brought back to their odd facility. And last but not least, Vita Carnis is a series that consists of meat organisms that slowly grow here on Earth, some being completely harmless, others being questionable, and some specifically designed to be apex predators superior to us in almost every single regard and purely thrive on hunting humans. To summarize, each of these series has their own apex predator that is overpowered in their own way, but they all share the goal of making sure we don't exist anymore. These will be our main mobile threats, but there's also plenty of stationary threats that rather will wait for you to step close enough to them, and to me, these are also equally as dangerous. And similar to Trevor Henderson, these series also possess some rare and Titanic-sized beings. And if you're wondering how humanity as a whole is even still alive at this point, the answer might not be as good as you're hoping. Rather, the governments have been in league with these things, making human sacrifices in order to keep them off our backs, at least for now. The Carnis or Carnies, for example, formed a type of cult, and the Iris seems to send odd humanoid representatives, referred to as the well-dressed men, down to make odd deals with us, and then punishing us if we refuse to listen or screw them over in any way. In this specific example, the Carnis would likely be the dominant entity in the urban areas, as mimics prefer crowded locations with lots of people. Meanwhile, woodcrawlers and what I'm just going to be calling the humanoids would likely be more common in suburban and rural areas, so you can take your pick on what monstrosity you'd be waking up to. But regardless, nowhere is completely safe, especially because woodcrawlers are insanely good at burrowing and can break through solid metal, to the point where waking up in the morning would be half the time to something breaking into your house. Believe me, I wish I was kidding, because most of these entities don't give a damn about subtlety, as a lot of these entities will simply just break into your house and attempt to end you. So the first thing you'd want to do is immediately run and go find some sort of weapon. Or if you prefer, simply just sprint for your life. But if you are going to go with the former, I suggest a flamethrower, as it seems to serve as a sort of kill-all for these things. If you do manage to survive this, your routine would be nowhere near over, as you would need to immediately go to the bathroom as soon as possible and inspect yourself in the mirror for bulbs and other root growth. As in Gemini Home Entertainment, there's so much worse things that can happen to you than simply being stalked in your sleep. Rather, you can actually be infected by a deadly and horrendous pathogen in your sleep, referred to as deep root disease, or DRD. DRD, if not immediately noticed and removed, attaches and burrows into your skin until it reaches your skeletal system. It will then rapidly mutate your body until you're nothing more than a mess of roots. So if you see any signs of this, you're going to need to surgically remove it as soon as possible. Otherwise, you're not going to like what your life consists of. Unfortunately, it is likely that while distracted inspecting yourself in the mirror, a mimic that had been hiding in your furniture before would see this as an opportunity, would come out, sneak up behind you, and tear you to shreds. It's obvious that since we're only like 5 minutes into the video, this isn't going to do. We need to figure out a different way, because I'm going to be real here, with all three of these series put together, you probably wouldn't last a week in a mild climate, especially ones with very high populations. So alternatively, the only realistic way I can actually make this video is if you do look into buying a home somewhere with less of these creatures around. In my How to Logically Survive videos, I saw a few comments mentioning desert and snowy environments being hypothetically extremely effective at keeping the amount of entities at a manageable amount. Here, the survival rate would still be low, but at the very least, less people means less mimics, as it is their main food source, along with less humanoids, as with no one to take over, they have no skin to wear and less means to lure other humans, so I would assume they wouldn't waste their time here. Those entities in particular would likely be too busy swarming cities and other population centers. But these barren, harsh climates would see a significant decrease. At least, we can only hope so. So in order to have any sort of life to begin with, you're likely going to have to move to Alaska or northern Canada. Or at least that's the case for Americans. As for any other country, heading north is probably a safe bet. But regardless of this, don't think for a second that you are safe. As technically the Carnis do still exist in colder regions, there's just less of them. As do wood crawlers, which is confirmed in the first video where we see them moving across snow with almost no sound. So after checking inside all of your furniture, killing or avoiding the entity that you woke up to, and then thoroughly checking for deep root disease, I think you can finally enjoy a nice breakfast and head out for your day. Can y'all tell how fun living in this universe is going to be yet? Now, going out in any form in this universe would likely be an interesting task, as the people you're going to encounter are either going to be irritated and traumatized from having to flee their homes and go live in the Arctic randomly, or they're going to be one of the humanoids who are trying to lure you just close enough to make you their next target. It seems the humanoids from Basswood County are intelligent and able to take down targets without much difficulty. In case you don't remember or you haven't seen it to begin with, they seem to manifest in this sort of core that grows inside human skin and allows them to sort of resemble a kind of person, except they have roots growing out of their back and abnormally long limbs. Basically, picture alternates, but instead of making you end your own life, they cut right to the chase and do it themselves. So when going out anywhere, be it school or work or shopping of any kind, make sure you don't trust anyone no matter what, unless you without a doubt know that it's still your friend that you were talking to and not something else, and your actual friend has been gone for a long time now. Similar to my other video, staying in groups of people, even if it's just 3 or 4, could also help you out because mimics don't seem to like confronting groups. Now, you're probably wondering, well, why don't we just call the police? But according to the circumstances, I don't even think you can trust people like cops or doctors at this point, as they are either under orders to look for sacrifices for the iris, or they are fake imitations that have been taken over by the humanoids. So do try your best to stay to yourself, being as quick and observing as possible, and hopefully schools would have precautions such as entry checkpoints similar to airport securities to check if people are infected with deep root disease, as well as making sure they have nothing living inside of them, as to not spread it, as well as making sure they're actually themselves and they're not just an entity wearing someone else's skin. But regardless, it's safe to say if you see someone losing their shit on the floor in the halls, it's likely not because they're crashing out over homework or finals or something, and rather because the insanity inflicted by the humanoid is starting to take effect, or the roots have reached their skeletal structure. Either way, it's probably smart to get out of there and take a half day as soon as possible. Alternatively, when it comes to the workplace, again, hoping there's security, I can't imagine customer service would be an easy task. Oh, hello, sir. How may I help you today? Yeah, they definitely don't pay me enough for this shit. Yeah, that's my signal to go on leave. Now, before I go to the vacation section of this video, I want to go over transportation since I've been talking about running away from these things a lot. Unlike the Trevor Henderson universe, where I strictly recommended against cars due to how many things can block your path and still take you out, when it comes to at least Gemini Home Entertainment, wood crawlers use heat vision to see you, so if you're inside of something that's blocked by metal and glass, along with being elevated off the ground, it'll be a lot harder for them to detect you, making you nearly invisible to them. So if you're really paranoid and live in a more wood crawler prone neighborhood, perhaps consider living out of a van or a large truck if you really want to improve your safety odds while maintaining safe transportation. But if that's the case, it's probably smart you do consider heavily tinted windows to make sure the Carnis or humanoids can't see and track you inside your vehicles, because God knows they're sure as hell gonna try. As for public transport, it would be an option if it weren't for the whole mimicking people thing that, by the way, the Carnis and wood crawlers can also sort of do as well. Hell, if you want to be really specific, I just remembered that in Gemini Home Entertainment, there are literally things called fake people that can mimic humans' entire shape and structure. The only thing being obviously different is the way they move and the way they speak. So honestly, taking public transit would only be for people who want some more risk in their lives. But if you really want to be built different, you can try your luck walking, or more realistically, sprinting your way home. But since majority of people are probably going to prefer the car approach, make sure you don't run out of gas. I heavily suggest filling jerry cans and refueling in a location that is more guaranteed to be safe, rather than having to randomly run out and go to a gas station, or God forbid, be stranded in the middle of nowhere late at night. I forgot to mention you should probably also be checking your car seats and trunk on a frequent basis too. Okay, by this point I think our survival percentage is down to the mid to low 50s, but we are still technically over the alternative, so I guess that's a win. By this point you can probably assume that there are plenty of places that you could accidentally end up on vacation that'd be considered dangerous and high population centers and would lead to your immediate death. But to make this video more interesting, I'm going to go ahead and run right into the fire and suggest we go camping in the middle of the forest for our vacation. Fortunately, the humanoids are less likely to venture out here, as well as mimics, because they both thrive on large amounts of bodies and they wouldn't bother coming out here. However, that doesn't mean that you're now scot-free, otherwise I would have just said go live in the forest from the beginning. Wood crawlers, as evident by their names, thrive in forest environments, especially summer camps like Moonlight Acres. And if you didn't need any more proof of this, many television programs in this universe actually promote children into venturing off into the middle of the woods at night and screaming in order to quote-unquote feed the forest, aka sacrificing them to wood crawlers. So you're going to want to avoid attracting these at all costs. Other than that, the main threats out here would be nature's mockery and harvesters. Basically, you're going to want to watch where you step. And to paint a better picture of how bad getting caught would be, I think I'd rather step on an actual claymore mine and lose both my legs than on the spines of a harvester. Oh, and quick side note, if you do see or especially hear any people out here, you're going to want to try and drown that out as much as possible. Fires are also going to be a definite no, as if the light doesn't attract the wood crawlers, the heat sure as hell will. However, if you do want to look into how to increase the quality of your vacation, do dig a trench that you can both sit in during the day and sleep in at night. If possible, cover up the top with branches too, so there is only one small entrance, making it very hard for them to see your heat emanating as you are underground. And don't, under any circumstances, travel around at night, because if you do start shrinking, you could run right into a... Oh, dude, you gotta be kidding me. Okay, whatever you do, don't. Okay, I literally just said don't run. Now you're really screwed. I'm assuming that the Elder Mimic must have followed you from home, as they tend to stalk people for days until they find you alone and vulnerable. Personally, in my opinion, there's no use in running from mimics, as if they really wanted to catch you, they could. And all running really does in a situation like this is get you insanely lost in the dark and risk you running into one of the creatures I talked about earlier. The best thing in this scenario would be looking for some sort of shelter, mainly an abandoned house or cabin. And while technically it's not the safest option, it's better than sitting outside where wood crawlers could easily tear you to shreds. So unless you have enough time to dig yourself another trench, I suggest looking for another shelter. And you don't have to worry about there being other people inside. I'm almost guaranteed that anyone who is living out here is definitely gone by now. Once you get inside, you want to take the time to think about where you parked your car, as in reality you're probably not going to last the entire night out here. So your goal is to get to your car as soon as possible. The only problem is that you need to find a way to navigate from wherever you are now through the dark to your car and drive off without making enough noise to attract something unfavorable, especially because these things can literally sink your car into the ground and take whatever is inside with ease. Well, to start off, use non-heat emanating light sources, mainly chemical ones like glow sticks for an example, which if you have the right type can last up to 12 hours, and they don't get off enough heat to attract wood crawlers. Sure, they'll still be able to see your body heat, but you won't be putting out a giant beacon to everything within a 2-mile radius by going all medieval with a torch or something. Secondly, don't run unless absolutely necessary. You're going to need time to look in every direction for harvester bulbs jetting out of the ground, as harvesters are majority hidden, so you won't be able to see them until it's way too late and they're already injecting toxins into you, which at that point it's an immediate 0% chance that you survive. Also, you're going to want to keep an eye out for the little roots, as if you run into them, you'll become trapped as they slowly melt you down and infect you with deep root disease. So you might as well be walking through a minefield, which is why you should definitely take it really slow and coordinated. But if you're lucky, you'll either A, make it back to your car, B, survive somewhere until daytime, or C, at least when you die, it's quick, and you won't spend your entire life being tortured by roots growing out of your bones and skin. Regardless, in your current predicament, survival chances are lingering in the low 20s. Okay, the survival percentage is starting to get a little bit low, so to avoid dying quite yet, we need to come up with a plan for what happens when one of these things decides to target you. The amount of things that can happen in this universe is insane. Anything from what Harbinge Technologies calls a storm to a trimming infestation. So we need to figure out a sort of contingency plan on what you're supposed to do. And unlike my How to Logically Survive videos, I'm not going to hesitate to say buy the biggest gun that you can afford. I would imagine that certain plans would be aired frequently on TV, so I went ahead and made a hypothetical informational tape for y'all. So you found your home has a few new visitors. What is a homeowner like yourself to do? Step 1. Identify the threat. Figuring out what has become part of your home as soon as possible can make a big difference. And the way to deal with these threats differ greatly. So ask yourself this: have my family members been acting off recently? Do they look okay? And most importantly, do you remember living alone in the past? If any of these answers are yes, but you're still noticing someone resembling a person in or outside your house, alternatively, if you notice a small rodent meat creature digging through your trash, it is important to not under any circumstances bring them in and make them your pets, as they are very loud and screech all night. Trimming noises are unknown in purpose, but some people believe they may be calling out. Finally, if you notice many unidentifiable lights in the field or sky, you're going to want to immediately find a place to hide, taking advantage of how big these creatures are and hiding in out-of-sight areas. Now, for this last one, the highest survival rate would be hiding in your garage, as the whole vehicle thing I stated earlier would make it so you could just hide where you put your feet, putting clothes and other items over yourself, so if they did manage to look in the windows, they wouldn't be able to see you at all. And to be honest, start praying, because if a swarm specifically targets your house, you're not going to be there much longer. Now, if it wasn't apparent from the tape and the 10% that our survival rate is still at, even in a location like snow or the desert, the life expectancy still would not be very long. And the darkest part of this is, most of the time, your life would not be ended right then and there, as most of the Gemini home entertainment entities prefer either infecting you with roots, which God knows how long you'll live in that case, or wood crawlers specifically entering you through the nose or mouth and using your body to lure other humans. And if that sounds familiar, the Basswood County humanoids that I've been talking about have very similar behaviors, driving you to insanity until you aren't lucid enough to stop them from tearing you open and crawling inside of your skin. But throughout the series, there are subtle hints that you might still have a form of consciousness while this is happening, as disturbing as that might seem. Vita Carnis seems to be the most merciful of the three, as mimics simply eat your flesh, ending you instantly, assuming that you lose consciousness out of the first few tears. And technically, harvesters do paralyze you, so you would only have to watch as you bleed to death, and you technically wouldn't feel it. So overall, the life expectancy depends on what would kill you. Certain things would be in your 20s to 30s, others might let you last until your 40s, or I guess until the iris reaches the earth. Yeah, I kind of forgot to mention that. It is slowly creeping towards us, and the more time goes forward, the more the gardeners, which are basically wood crawlers that live underground, are turning the crust of our planet into roots. And since the series isn't finished, I don't know exactly what that means for us, but my guess is that we as humanity would have about until that's finished. All in all, with these three series put together, it doesn't seem like you would have much life in general. But I wanted to see how they fit together, as a lot of them possess similarities to each other.
Well, that was quite an adventure. I'm sad to see you go, but don't worry, this doesn't have to be the last time we see each other. I got another cool video. Just for you. Hurry, the video's almost over.